I'm talking today to Yoel Kenan of Africori. Africori is an African music rights company. Yoel, tell me about your history, because you used to work in for a record company that dealt with Africa as a territory. What was that like?
I'm French, so I've started working in the music business in '86, so quite a long time ago. And in '97, '96, I moved to the UK to work in the international offices. So we were overlooking all the international markets, and Africa was part of that. So I was quite involved with projects in Africa, which for a record company, for a major record company, and I worked for Universal and BMG, which is now Sony Music. For a major record company, Africa was mostly or only South Africa. So anything outside of South Africa was in existence. And South Africa at that time was 19th or 20th market in the world. So it was actually a smaller market than Portugal, to give it in perspective. So in terms of the importance of the African market, it was actually non-existent. On top of it, we never seen, or the music business never saw South Africa as a territory which was, where new music could be originated. Local music was. They never saw it as a source of international
talent, really.
Of talent, no.
Yeah.
But interestingly enough, because I've connected with the managing director of Decca and Philips in Nigeria in the '70s. Which actually now lives in London and is advising Africori and support. We're talking about some projects together. And he told me that in the '70s, Polygram Nigeria was generating much more revenues than, or profit than Polygram in the UK. So, and Nigeria was a very buoyant market for the music industry. I mean, they had a...
This was before piracy, really.
That was before piracy. That was at the time after the independence and the Biafra War, and it was a time with amazing creative energy in Nigeria, but also a big market. And it's interesting, and that's really what got me back into Africa, because I've been involved with South Africa for a while. I've been involved with a few markets who were not used to be seen as a source of international talent. Like I work with Enrique Iglesias, which was signed to a Mexican record company, Fonovisa, belonging to the Televisa, or the whole Telefonica group. But for Fonovisa, saw Enrique as a Latin American artist, and working in the UK, we decided to A&R the project and made him sing in English and find him some songs and record it in Miami, and then, as we said, the rest is history. I worked with an Israeli artist which was signed to Geffen Records, more into the jazz space, under Pat Metheny Group. Again, we sold over 1 million records going there. So I've always been interested in looking at areas or countries
producing breakout artists.
Exactly. I love the idea of breakout artists.
Yeah.
And how you break artists, not of course in their own home territory, but also in the neighboring territory and then internationally.
And Nigeria is particularly attractive in this instance.
Nigeria is particularly attractive. I think in Africa it's attractive. I've produced the 3 winners of the Zambian Pop Idol 7-8 years ago, which was called the Celtel Star Search. And I remember producing the winner, Theo, in New York, and the people, the team that we've put together in New York of studio engineers and producer professionals, American professionals, were impressed by the quality of the talent and the songs and the songwriting, because what people tend to forget is that Africa has a huge talent in songwritings. And what we're seeing at the moment is American producers in the hip-hop and R&B world, mostly based between Atlanta and the East Coast, New York and all that space, going to Africa or listening to African music to get inspirations. And African music is not in the way that we see African music in terms like the fela and the
it's many musics, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the current music.
Yeah.
It's the current pop, hip-hop,
R&B
music that goes around the continent, because the melodies are very interesting. And we saw the strength of Akon. I know he has a very good link with Africa, but he's very, very strong at choruses. He's got that magical, he can, he always gets you some killing choruses, and there's a lot of killing choruses in Africa. So I think in the creative world, that's definitely attracting me, and attracted me to Africa. And the second thing is, as someone involved in business, because, we talked about it before, but working at mp3.com and digital companies like that in the last 10, 12 years, I see Africa as the new frontier, the space where so many things are happening.
Which brings us to what you're doing with Africori. Describe what that's going to be.
So Africori, we're a music rights agency, which means that we are aggregating and acquiring African rights from digital rights and also publishing rights. We're looking at how do you unlock value for those rights. And in Africa, the main issue in Africa is that there's no infrastructure. There is now potential distribution through the digital and telecom infrastructure, but there's no infrastructure to link the content to those stores or open new stores into Africa. So what we're doing is we've partnered with DigiPlug, which is an Accenture company who specialize in digital infrastructure, working for Universal and Warner, and they are providing us the backbone to create, again, a platform that will help us not only to ingest the content, but also to distribute the content and get the reporting. Because there's not
enough, the monitoring of...
It's a monitoring, there's not enough intelligence for the industry. So it's much easier to promote and market an artist in the UK or in Europe or in America, or even in Latin America, than it is in Africa. So you can get your music, for example, most of the revenues come from ringback tones at the moment.
Yeah.
But there's very little reporting from the telecom companies about how many ringback tones my track has generated on that operator for this month. And I'm not even talking about the payment, which can take months and months.
And the striking thing about this moment in Africa for music is that there's now a set of online platforms, both for film and video and music. What do you think will happen there, and how do you think that will change what is occurring?
I think it's very interesting. First of all, it's very exciting, because I've been now in focus on Africa since 2004, 2005. So almost 8 to 9 years soon. And there's a big change happening at the moment. It's 95% mobile driven. What we've seen now with the laying of the back of the pipes in East and West Africa, that there is, of course, an increase of data and going into that, which means that the cost of data is going down. We see it to level. It's going to be an offering through mobile and tablets maybe later on, but mobile definitely. We see a number of international companies coming down into Africa, iTunes, Deezer, Spinlet, Simfi. And now we see new African companies like Yoel Kenan and Morocco in Nigeria. I think what is interesting is that the business model, the consumption, first of all, will be maybe a bit different. The way people consume music will be a bit maybe different to the way it is in Europe, because of the infrastructure and the ecosystem. But secondly, I think that the business model, the way music will be paid for and how they're going to pay the music will be also different to the way it is in Europe. And so what I'm saying is, yes, streaming might work or download might work, but do you subscribe? How do you subscribe? Do you
pay per track?
Pay by tracks? Do you create incentives for entrepreneurs to resell your music, so you create your own distribution system? It's by understanding the complexity and what makes each market in Africa different, and its backbone and infrastructure which exists today, and see which means that they've got a certain traditions and certain customs in doing business, and saying, can you do the same with music? And the analogy was always airtime. The way you sell airtime in the UK or in Italy or in Spain is totally different to the way you sell airtime in Africa. When Cell C in South Africa introduced the 5 rand, the 50 cents euro, the 40p voucher, which is such a small denomination, they saw a huge boom of consumptions, which means there were a lot of people who maybe didn't want to spend £5 vouchers for airtime. They were ready to spend 50p, and what it happens, they took some market share from the other networks. So little things like that can have quite a big difference, and helping your business to be more successful.
And how many platforms do you think there'll be, and how many will survive?
It's the same question everywhere in the world. I mean, I think there will be. I think there'll be only a few of them. I think the interesting thing is at the moment
What, 2 or 3?
I think it's going to be 2 or 3. Yeah, there will be consolidations. I mean, it's interesting because in the telco space today, there's a lot of independent telecom operations in Africa, or in regionals operations, like Millicom in some places. You've got the 3 or 4 big networks. But what is interesting is that there will be consolidations in that space. But the big change, and I see the big change at the moment, is what we've seen here is, at the moment, the gatekeepers for music distributions in Africa are the telecom operators, because the most of the money is generated by that. They take a big revenue share.
Yeah.
And once that is going to be, it will change.
Yes.
Because you've got
What will persuade them to change? Because at the moment they're taking 80% of the revenue.
It depends. Yeah, they can take as much as 80%. Sometimes they're taking less. We try to get better deals for that. That's our job. That's what the thing that Africori does. But what will change is when there will be other ways of charging the end user than airtime.
Yeah.
So
internet-based ways of
mobile payments.
Yeah.
So when you work with some mobile payment, and there are mobile payment solutions in Nigeria, in Africa, and of course everybody knows M-Pesa, which is actually been rolled out by a telecom operator. But when you will see mobile payments in Africa being easily accessed, where the margin will be 6 or 7%, then suddenly we will only need, or those platforms, distributors will only need the telecom as a data providers, data connections, and not anymore as the company who's also enable them to transact with the customers.
Yoel, thanks for talking to me today.
Thank you.